Don, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Diane, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, we're going to get underway shortly. Okay, I'm going to call our meeting to order.
Did we do Gene already? Are we on?
Yeah. So I'm going to call our meeting to order at Sunrise School Division, the Board of Trustees on March the 15th. In the room, we have Trustee Ainsley, Trustee Duma, Trustee Reed, Trustee Harris, Trustee Pachakowski, and myself. And on the line, we have Trustee Nickel and Trustee Rowland. In the room with us, we have Superintendent Timko, Secretary-Treasurer Carlton, Assistant Superintendent Julian. We have Board Support Stacy Bonato, and we have a team from the glorious north of Powerview. We have Principal Reed, we have Vice Principal Mr. Sharp, and Vice Principal Mary Jo Avorka. We're going to go to 1.2, and we're going to have O Canada, sung by Cole Bolger Earlier School. Please stand if you can do so. Thank you, merci to Cole Bolger Earlier School. Trustee Inslee is going to, has said that she would go ahead and read our treaty acknowledgement. Trustee Inslee, the floor is yours.
We acknowledge the traditional land upon which Sunrise School Division resides as Treaty 1 territory. We honour our partnership with Canada's original peoples and respect the gifts of Indigenous history, culture and language. We commit to moving forward in partnership with our communities in a spirit of collaboration and reconciliation.
Thanks, Trustee Ainsley. We have the adoption of the agenda. Be it resolved that the board approve the agenda. Needs a mover and a seconder. Moved by Trustee Pachakowski, seconded by Trustee Reed. Questions? Hearing none, please all join the meeting electronically and we'll vote electronically. And it was voted 8 in favor. And again, my apologies. I should let everyone know that Trustee Barry is ill, and so he's not here. So there's 8 trustees that are with us. Thank you for that. A reminder, 3.1, Chair's comments. A reminder to send all questions to scarlton@sunrisesd.ca. And this is the first time that we are open, and there are probably about 5 or 6 seats that are available to the public. This is the first time in how long? 2 years that our meetings are open to the public, and certainly people are welcome to come and attend. And again, the mask mandate is off in our schools. depending, it's up to each individual person to decide whether they want to certainly don a mask or not. So we're at 3.2 to share a story. I'm going to open up to anyone. Would you like to share a story? Okay, I'll start. The first one is that all of us here certainly are thinking about the people in Ukraine, and our thoughts and prayers are with many of our staff members that have family and friends in the Ukraine. And so certainly as a board, again, to reach out to the people that you know and that you don't know that have family in Ukraine, and our thoughts and prayers are certainly with you. I'm going to keep going. I'd like to thank the trustees on Friday at the Manitoba School Boards Association annual meeting. I got elected to the executive, and I'll serve on the executive now for the Manitoba School Boards for Region 3. Region 3 goes from Hanover School Division in the south to Lakeshore, Evergreen, Interlake, Lord Selkirk, Sunrise, Seine River. That's the group of people that I'll be representing, so thank you for that support. I'm not sure if this is our last meeting with Assistant Superintendent Julian. I remember Jackie being a principal at Hazel Ridge School, and then coming to Powerview, and off to Springfield Collegiate, and now the work that you've done as the Assistant Superintendent. And I'm not sure if this is the last one, but certainly on behalf of all of us, thank you very much, Jackie, for the work that you've put in. Scott, I'm not sure if this is our last meeting with us, but it's the same sort of thing. You've been with us and have helped steer us certainly financially over the last little while, and you're saying that we have one more meeting, but certainly on behalf of the board, thank you very much for the work that you're doing, and we hope we never see you again at Seine River School Division. I do want to continue on. Congratulations goes out to Springfield Collegiate hockey team, Mr. Wojcik, Mr. Harper, and I guess Mr. Dell. I'm not sure I want to congratulate Mr. Dell, but their hockey team went on and won the B division in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League, and we've been talking about that and kidding back and forth, but congratulations to the coaches and certainly all the students that were there. I think the team only lost twice throughout the entire year, so kudos to them. We have the Powerview School staff in front of me. I certainly want to say congratulations to the work that they did. Mr. Sharp and Mr. Reed were instrumental in teaming up with Mr. Gary Swampy, the principal at Saugeen High School, and we put in a high school hockey team this year. We ended up losing to Springfield Collegiate. But we had a great season and did very, very well. So again, kudos to Trevor and Larry for the work that you did about organizing that, because the kids certainly had a great opportunity to go ahead and play some great hockey. Those are my shares of stories. Anyone else want to share a story? Go ahead, Jackie. Oh, sorry, Russ, go ahead. Trustee Reed.
My story is similar to Paul's. For the first time in 15 years, I guess it is, the 9 and 10 boys from Lac du Bonny were successful at provincials. They didn't win the gold medal, but they did win consolation, and as I say, it's the first time in a long time, but we're hoping that we can have some of the success that we had in earlier years, and I'd like to congratulate and thank the coaches who led that team. And as I say, it was held in Bertle, which is a 6-hour drive from Lac du Bonny, so it's a long way, but they were pretty happy coming home. Thank you.
Russ, what sport was that? Pardon me?
What sport? Basketball.
Thanks, Trustee Reed. Jackie?
Yeah, I just wanted to share that I had the pleasure of being at Oakbank Elementary last Thursday afternoon for the Freedom Walk. Started the afternoon with Principal Denica sharing a message about what is happening in Ukraine right now, and it was wonderful to be there and then watch all the students K to 5 go for a walk in the community, holding their artwork, their flags, and their messages in support of the people of Ukraine. I also was able to find out that there was also some community involvement, so a big thank you to the RM who had gone out early in the morning and cleared the sidewalks so it would be accessible to all students, including students who were in wheelchairs. And also the fire department, the volunteer fire department came out and had the fire truck there. And I can just say, just standing outside and watching all the students, it was absolutely an overwhelming feeling and a great sense of pride for Sunrise School Division, the students of OB and the staff and Principal Denica. So it was a wonderful opportunity I had.
Thanks, Jackie. Kathy?
Thanks, Jackie, for sharing that one. It's kind of fun to cross off things off the list, and I've got a couple of the sports ones, but we had some other provincial representation. The École Edward girls were in our curling provincials. The Springfield Collegiate boys were represented at the curling provincials. In the junior varsity girls, the École Edward girls also won the consolation in basketball out in Sanford. Didn't have to travel as far, didn't go to Birtle, so I have the EESS JV girls, one in Sanford, Lactabani boys in Birtle, and then the SCI varsity girls are playing this weekend in Brandon, and as well as the hockey, congratulations to SCI. So that's some pretty good athletics on the go.
And certainly, Kath, that's dedication of our staff for taking all these teams and going ahead and doing those kind of things. And again, we talk about athletics being another part of education, but again, it's our teachers that are volunteering to go ahead and do this, and so shout out to them, certainly when they're going to provincials and going to weekends, and so, you know, kudos to the staff at all the schools for that kind of work and that kind of dedication to the kids, so thanks for going ahead and doing that. Do we have any other share stories? Anybody online? Okay. So we're going to move to our board delegation. We have Powerview School here, and Kath, I'll turn the floor over to you.
I think we already had some introductions of Mr. Reed, Mr. Sharp, and Ms. Havorka-Seymour, who are going to take it away. Their presentation on what's happening up at École Powerview School and their school literacy goal. It's good stuff.
Perfect. Well, thanks to the board for having us and allowing us the opportunity to share a little bit about our school. I'll be doing the presenting tonight, but of course I got my supportive crew with us here. I remember we were talking on the way down that the last time we were here was actually Larry that took the lead in presenting for us, and that was the last time we had the chance to be here, but that was at least 2+ years ago, right? And Mary Jo is a newer administrator in our school, is just here with us tonight to kind of soak it all in and check it out, because next time we're here she gets to lead the group here. So thanks for the opportunity. So yeah, we're going to present to you here tonight just on our school literacy goal, and Kathy, if you want to click over. You know, our school goal, as it's written, is basically all K-12 students will increase their independent literacy skills to a level appropriate or beyond grade level expectations, right? And so, you know, kind of a generalized statement, but at the same time a very important one. Literacy is our focus at Powerview School. We believe that, you know, we have all kinds of things that are important, but literacy is the gateway that opens up all the subject areas to our students. And when they can become independent with text, it just makes, you know, our classrooms, you know, the options available to our teachers, you know, that much more, right? And so we do have the K-12 school, as you know, so picking a literacy goal, you know, that's specific to those grades isn't exactly easy, so we do break it down. So in our early years, as you can see, we're looking to develop the oral language and literacy skills with a focus on using small group instruction, and that small group instruction I'll come back to. That's a big part of what we're going to talk about tonight. In our middle years, we're just looking at our reading skills and reading comprehension. You know, we can maybe decipher the text on the page, but do we actually understand what we're reading, and can we make sense of it? And then in the high school, it's not anything new for us, because we've been looking at the reading apprenticeship strategies with our high school teachers and with our students for several years now. So we're just continuing that work, again, because that's where we want kids to be when they leave school. Doesn't matter what they pick up, what they're viewing, what they're reading, whether it's an instruction manual, assembly instructions, scientific material, that they can be independent and make sense of what that is. So that's the end goal for kids when they leave our schools. So, right, Kathy? So what we're going to talk about tonight, though, is we are going to talk about our early years, sort of foundational. That's where it all starts for us. And so, again, it was developing that oral language and literacy skills, taking advantage of small group instruction. So, I called them on this page our commitments. They're really the key elements of our plan. What were we endeavoring to do? Certainly we wanted to make sure that we were using proven instructional strategies. We didn't want to go out and reinvent the wheel. Let's focus on what we know what works. And so we wanted to do that. We wanted to invest in quality materials to use with students. It's not about necessarily spending money, but if we're going to be honest, sometimes, investing in things of a quality, it just works, right? And so we wanted to make sure we were putting good materials in front of our students. We wanted to make the data collection very simple and straightforward for our teachers. I think a lot of the times when we talk about school improvement and growth, the place where we've been challenged in the past, and I think where just education in general always breaks down a little bit, is that data collection. Sometimes it's hard and cumbersome. So we wanted to use tools that were already in front of us and tools that were simple to use. And we'll talk a little bit about that tonight as well. And then finally, we just wanted to make the most of the people in our building and prioritize our human resources that we had and put them in front of students as often as possible. And the list is there: our classroom teachers, our educational assistants, our learning support teachers, which come from the divisional SSFBA allocation that we get into the school. So that's what we're using that allocation for. I'm sure Jackie at various board meetings has spoken to that allocation quite a bit. Our local resource teachers, and the divisional clinicians that come into our schools. We have an expectation that we have those people in front of students as well. So the board, the division, has supported our school in recent years for sure with those human resources. But as I kind of said earlier, those resources are most valuable when they're in front of students. And so we wanted to make sure that we were putting those resources in front of kids as often as possible as we went through this. So again, in the early years, we were really focusing on the small group instruction. So I just thought I would share a couple of examples of what small group instruction looks like at Powerview School. So this example, it's just actually our grade 4-5 classroom. We have 3 adults, the classroom teacher, an educational assistant, and one of our learning support teachers. They're all timetabled into the classroom every day for 80 minutes for the ELA block. So that is their timetable. They're there. They've been there every day this year. That's not changing. The teacher, as the lead, has gone ahead and divided the class into 4 groups, approximately 4 to 7 students. Those groups do change as the year goes on. There's a dynamic element to that. But they're basically structured on their learning needs. Then we take each one of the 3 adults, and they work with a group of students. So we've got 1 adult working with anywhere from 4 to 7 kids. And so it's that low educator to pupil ratio that we often talk about being desirable in education. The 4th group works independently, and the activities are planned by the classroom teacher, and at times the learning support teacher is the 2 professionals that are in the classroom. And then the group rotates every 15 to 20 minutes. So they move from 1 adult to the next and 1 activity to the next. So there's some variety. We'd never ask our grade 4 or 5 kids to do the same thing for 80 minutes. That's not a recipe for success. So we cycle them through. The key piece being there is we don't divide that time equally among the students and the adults. We make sure that we prioritize our neediest groups. So if you're in one of the groups that has identified as most of the needs, you won't have an independent task during that time. You will be working with an adult in each one of your 3 cycles through. So that's just one example. Another example that we have, this is one of our kindergarten classes. And this one's interesting. Just wanted to highlight this one because we have the classroom teacher and educational assistant again. However, we have also timetabled one of our resource teachers and our speech language pathologist into the classroom as well. So an example of a clinician going in. So we have the 4 adults with the kids for a 75-minute chunk of time. Again, the teacher divides them into 4 groups. Because these kids are a little bit younger, we can't assume that the same level of independence would be there for a group. So we have each of the groups of kids working with an adult for that full amount of time. And again, they rotate through the tasks, because of course these are our 5-year-olds or 6-year-olds in the spring, and you know, they're not going to last on anything for much longer than 15 minutes, no matter how entertaining it is. So that rotation from adult to adult and task to task is key again. So, Kathy. So, you know, what are they working on in their small groups? This is a very, very generalized list. You know, we could do an entire presentation just on what they're working with. But, you know, some of these things are pretty broad topics that I'm sure you've heard at different presentations. But we've got, you know, various types of reading, including the teacher-led guided reading, asking students to do independent reading. We're working on fine motor skills. Because as we talk about literacy, a big part of literacy is not only the reading, but the writing. And, you know, a barrier for some kids is actually gripping a pencil and hand strength, right? And so working on fine motor skills to strengthen hands. One example of that is a program that we purchase every year called Handwriting Without Tears. Our teachers find that beneficial for, you know, fine motor skills and strengthening hands. Independent writing, guided writing. We take advantage, especially in the independent side of things, the literacy and technology. There is, you know, a lot of good material associated with technology that students can use independently. And so that's a big part of this when we talk about those groups that are working independently and not always in contact with an adult. A lot of oral language activities, word and literacy games are part of it, high engagement activities. And then the last 2 on the list I put on there very specifically because we're going to highlight these 2 things and some of the data that we're going to share. One of those being the Haggerty materials and the leveled literacy intervention kits. And so I'll speak to those a little bit later on. So, go ahead, Kathy. So this is big, I know. Do you want to go back one, Kath? I just want to thank you. I just want to speak to this because we've been here in front of the board before, and we know that a big part of these is you know, the question, how do we know this is working? I think I've heard that several times in the past, and we want to know that there's some data and evidence to back that up, and so we're going to highlight some of that for you tonight very specifically, and so go ahead, thanks. So I do apologize for maybe the small print on this presentation. I'll talk to each of these two bar graphs here. I'll speak to the one on the left first. So one of the data tools that we're using is the Sunrise of the divisional reading progressions. And I would think that the trustees would be familiar with the reading progressions to some extent. I like to think of the reading progressions of a list of the desirable skills or behaviors that we want to see in our students, right? It's a list of what good readers do and what we want them to do, right? And so things like, you know, a good reader, you know, would look at the pictures in a book to try and guess at a word or decipher a word that's unfamiliar to them, right? Or good readers know what punctuation marks do. They know that they would pause at a comma or a period, or they understand the importance of quotation marks. So these are all skills or attributes that we want to see in our young readers as we build literacy. And our progressions are the summary of those. So if we look at the one entitled the Grade 2 Reading Progression, we would see the blue 2 bars there are where our teachers assessed our kids to be in October. So in the Grade 2, we had 14 kids that were at the awareness stage and 4 kids that were at the emergent stage. And while it's not really designed to align with grade levels, if we kind of deciphered that a little bit, the awareness stage would be the kindergarten stage and the emergent stage would be roughly the grade 1 stage, right? And we don't want to get too defined. You'll hear our program leaders tell us about not getting too defined into those roles, but as an approximation to give you understanding where those kids are. So what's kind of, you know, interesting that, you know, we probably want to pay attention to, those 14 kids in the awareness stage as grade 2s, those were the kids that were in kindergarten, the year that our school year got cut off in March, and they went to remote learning. And then they were in grade 1 for a year that was largely disrupted off and on by the pandemic and a variety of things. So this year when we came back in September and took note of this in October, our grade 2s, the majority of them were still at the kindergarten reading level. That's where they were. So through a lot of good work, primarily the work that happened through small group instruction, you could see we'd fast forward to mid-February, and the orange bars on that left-hand graph, where, you know, we've moved the majority of kids forward into the early stage, which would be about a grade 2 level, right? And, you know, we still have some in the emergent stage, and unfortunately we have a few that are stuck in that awareness stage, and I will come back to those ones later. So good growth, but I would hope that we would get that with the resources that we would put into the classroom when you've got 3 adults working with groups of kids on this specific material. Very similar, our grade 4s, just as another example of data. I dropped the awareness stage off, which is kind of the kindergarten, and I've added the application, which would be closest to the grade 4, so the bottom on there is just changed a bit. But you can see, again, we are very heavy on the blue, which is the October on the left-hand side, which, you know, the emergent would be the grade 1 and the early being the grade 2, so that's where our grade 4s started the year. And you can see that the progress isn't quite as profound, but it is still very noticeable where we've moved the core kind of from a 1-2 level to a 2-3 level, right? And, you know, we still have work to do from February to June to try and move more of that orange or whatever over to the right-hand side. So that's the work. So some data that we collected from our reading progressions, the Sunrise tool that we're using to inform our instruction. So it's not really a new data collection tool. It's something that our teachers are already doing, so we can take advantage of something our teachers are already doing to show growth in terms of what our kids are doing. So, right, Kathy? So this next one here is one that I referred to on the other page there about the Haggerty materials. And it relates to phonemic awareness. And as it says on there, is the phonemic awareness is the ability to understand spoken words that are made up of individual sounds called phonemes. And if I get the pronunciation of that wrong, my wife, who's a speech language pathologist, is going to wring my neck when I get home. So I'm probably stumbling over that one. We always go back and forth between phonemes and, no, it is phonemes, like a phone. That's what she told me before I left. Think phone, Trevor, that phone, phonemes, so we're there. So anyways, just to speak a little bit about that, because, you know, the board may not be familiar with that, is we know that the letter O in our alphabet can make an O sound. We hear that in the word so, we hear that in the word no, right? And we think that that's kind of, you know, reading, you know, a letter makes a sound. Phonemic awareness goes one step further, because what kids also need to understand is I can go out and I can stub my toe. And the word toe has an O sound in it, but that's made with an O-E, right? And when I get paid by Sunrise twice a month, I go to the bank and that's where I deposit my dough, right? D-O-U-G-H, which is also an O sound, right? With the O-U-G-H, right? So same sound, different combination of letters. And finally, if the snow ever melts, I'll be able to mow my lawn, an O sound created by an O-W. So the actual ability to work with language goes far beyond the fact that a letter makes a sound. It's more about combinations of letters, and sometimes those combinations of letters will make a sound, and different combinations can also make the same sound, right? And so that's this awareness, phonemic awareness piece. And it is highly, highly associated with reading. And I'll be the first to admit, going back 3 or 4 years, that was something that was missing in our school. It's something that our clinicians brought forward and made us aware of, and something we've really been focusing on. So last year we had a group of staff that made an application to the Teacher Idea Fund, which was a provincial initiative coming out of the pandemic. And their idea was to even further highlight and prioritize phonemic awareness and oral language skills through the use of these Haggerty materials, which were, I guess, sort of a research program to, build these skills with students. And so we were a successful applicant. We were able to purchase some of these materials. They're very teacher-friendly in the sense that they're all pre-planned lessons. It's a daily activity that teachers do with a small group of kids again. So it fits in with our small group instruction model. And they're short. They're 10 to 15 minutes. And so they're all ready to go. Teacher goes, has a look, here's the lesson, we do it, the next day we'll take the next lesson. They're very, very user-friendly. So some of the data that we've gleaned from this is, again, on the left is our grade 2 classroom. Same classroom. It was, the assessment test is scored out of 48. The average class score on the first assessment was 25. We did that kind of in later November because we had to wait for these materials to arrive at the school. We tested again in February, and the average class score went up to 35. And so we're seeing a pretty substantial increase there in the phonemic awareness and those skills of our students. The second thing that we did was we did it with a group of grade 5 students. And we targeted with them because up in the grade 5 area we had about 8 students that could pretty much be labeled non-readers. And we were really struggling to get them going. So we took these kids in grade 5 and we gave them the same assessment. And you could see that, back in November they really didn't score much higher than our grade 2s. On a scale of 48 or a base of 48, they scored a 29. Then using the materials, they even showed further progress, and they ended up scoring out at a 44 out of 48 on the assessment, right? So good results in terms of, achieving some more phonemic awareness and building these skills in kids. The next step for us with this, though, as a school, is we don't know if that growth in either one of these two groups, but especially in the grade 5s, is actually translating to reading ability yet. So we do know that they've achieved a finite skill, and we do know that that finite skill, the research tells us, is foundational to reading, but the next kind of investigation for us is to take a closer look at these 8 kids, and are we seeing their reading levels improve? Are they becoming stronger readers? So that's something we'll be looking at for the remainder of the year. So Kathy, I'm just going to get you to go back to slide 8, I think, the first 2 graphs. Yeah, oh, one forward. So I'd highlighted on the grade 2 reading progressions there that we had those 4 kids that still by February hadn't moved, right? And so they're still stuck at that kindergarten level, and we're not seeing any progress there. So the third data set that, Kathy, you can kind of bounce back to there now is that level literacy intervention. So again, this was another kit that we purchased. It's a commercial product. It's a kit there. Again, it's designed to be, as it says up there, a short-term intervention that provides daily intensive small group instruction, right? That supplements or supports regular classroom literacy. So you're taking your neediest kids, and again, you're using some pretty specific materials with them. Has to happen in a small group. It doesn't work on a whole class basis, and you're using those materials with a small group of kids. And they're really designed for those students who are, have the greatest need or are stuck, in terms of advancing with their reading. So again, we didn't get these materials into the school in a timely fashion. They were on back order. So we've only been using them for about a month. So we don't have any kind of hard numerical data, but we did go to our resource teacher. Again, so this is our resource teacher now that's in front of kids using these materials. And the anecdotal observations that we kind of had is we're currently using them with 8 students in grade 2 and 3 that have shown very little or no growth from September to January. Again, these are the kids that are stuck. Since we started using the leveled literacy intervention, or what they're the LLI kits, with these students, we're starting to see some growth. The average growth over the last month has been a couple of reading levels per kid. So starting to move. We're moving the needle there. We'll have to see how far this goes, but it's encouraging. right? And so from now until June, or now until June, end of May, we'll continue to collect data and follow these kids and see if we continue to get those results. And so, thanks, Kathy. So the last thing I have there for you is, well, what are the supports from our board or from our division that really have helped make this work for us? Because we're seeing some positive data. And, I brought some snapshots of data through some specific classrooms, but we would see somewhat similar data in all of our rooms. In June, when we do our report for, our senior admin team and the division, we will have that for all of our classrooms. But what makes this work? What's important to us at Powerview School? Certainly the funds that the board of the division allocates under the title of school-based decision-making. That's important for us. That allows us to purchase those high-quality materials for students to use, whether it's the LLI kits. This year we used the Teacher Idea Fund to purchase the Haggerty materials, but if we were going to purchase additional materials going forward, we wouldn't have access to that same grant, so the SBDM was a place we would go. Good books for our classroom libraries. We take all of those things from SBDM, right? So trying to support literacy and student literacy in our school, that's what we use those funds for. I spoke lots about human resources, and what's really important to us in that category is the SSFBA funds, right? The human resources are 2 learning support teachers and our educational assistants that we get from SSFBA. Those are critical for us to be able to use the small group instruction, right? And I say small group instruction again, and I probably should have highlighted earlier, we're on board with the small group instruction as part of the divisional literacy pilot that's being, led by our program leaders, right? And so we're part of that, and so we're in on the small group instruction, and that's possible because of the staffing and the human resources we get from SSFBA and those allocations to our school. And the other thing that's really important to us in terms of the human resources is our clinical support that's allocated to our schools as well. So our SLP, our psychologist, even our OT and PT to help us work on the fine motor skills, those are critical pieces for us. Those human resources are very important to us. So, if you want to take a look at how is the division, how is the board supporting the work that's going on in Powerview School, those are 3 areas for sure where those are allocations that have come into our school from outside that are making this possible. So, and that's what we got for you this evening. So,
Thanks, Trevor. We appreciate it. Trevor, we're going to open up the floor to questions from trustees if they have any. So is there anybody online that has a question for Trevor?
I do.
Go ahead, Don.
What I'm really interested in is this is usually what happens when we get you to present to us. You present to us now, and then we don't hear about from you from another 2 years. I'd be interested to see those graphs that you showed, the progression. I'm not asking you to come back again, but it'd be nice if you would send us in June or whenever you make that report, in September, whenever you make it, so we can see the progression, what happened in October, what happened in February, and what's happening in June. I'd like to see that if that's possible.
Thanks, Don. Trevor's sitting across from us and he's shaking his head. And from trustees, it's, we had Edward Schreier come and present to us, and we asked about data for, at the end of the year, those kind of things. So that's a good thing. And Kathy's noting it down where we can continue to see where the growth is, because you're showing growth to us now. And what we're always continuing looking for is what you're doing is working, and so far it is working. I think that Don's, Trustee Nichols' question is it continuing to work? Don, did you want to say anything else?
No, that was it.
Okay. Anybody in the room here? Questions? Trustee Pachakowski?
I have a question. So, first off, thanks for the presentation. It was very informative, as always. I appreciate the way you present too. It keeps things interesting for sure. I guess one question I have is just regards, you spoke a lot about the leveled literacy intervention and some of the materials you purchased and we'll call it the pilot that you're doing at your school with those 8 students. You talked a lot about the small group instruction, and every time I hear about small group instruction and we see positive results come out of that, like I wonder what your thoughts are, if it's actually attributed to that content or if it's more attributed to that small group work. I know since I've been a trustee, I'd love to see class sizes change dramatically. I think that's really where we're going to benefit the most in our system, and where our students are going to benefit the most, resulting in obviously increased learning outcomes. But I'm just curious on your thoughts on that.
Well, I can't speak from a research point of view necessarily, but I think I can speak from, a 25-year observational career point of view, right? And so I think in some ways, the two are tied together a little bit, right? But I would probably have to land on the side and put the emphasis on the lower ratio of educators and students, right? I think good instruction, is probably the one thing that trumps everything, in our system. And to some extent, I think it's fair to say that instruction is somewhat easier when you're working with fewer students, right? We'll never get to the point, and nor should we get to the point where we have class sizes that are matching the sizes that we're doing with our small group instruction. Those are targeted interventions that we do for short periods of time, right? But, I always say that I have seen, great teachers do really good things with students without the best resources. And at the other end of the spectrum, you can put great resources in front of a less than spectacular teacher and not get good results, right? The ideal situation is when you have great educators working with great resources, you can really see things go, right? But I would say that, my own opinion is the fact that when we, have better educators working with small groups of students, I mentioned that earlier, like the results that we're seeing is what we should be expecting at Powerview School, given the resources, the human resources that we've put in front of these kids. If we weren't seeing those, I would be pretty disappointed. I'd be coming here tonight to talk to you about something else and hiding the fact that we weren't getting those results, right? And so, yeah, we should, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess just a follow-up comment, not really a question, is I think that's sort of what I was getting at. I know we're never going to get down to that ratio. I wish we could. I think we all wish we could, right? But I think, as a trustee, I want to try and offer our schools as much resources as we can to allow for those small group, breakouts more often than not, right? And so, obviously you guys are working with the resources you have, and obviously that's happening. But are there resources that we can provide that allow that to happen more often, I guess? And is that something that's more reasonable, right? Obviously we're not going to be able to reduce class sizes down to 8. So I guess that would be my comment, and if you wanted to comment further, that's fine. If you not, I understand.
Sure, I can tell you that we, K-8 in Powerview, I think we've got 14 homerooms off the top of my head. And with the learning support that we have, we've got that in 5 of those 14 classrooms, right? And we move it around a little bit. Would all of our classrooms benefit from 75 to 80 minutes a day of, this ability to, deliver small group instruction? Absolutely they would, right? Absolutely. Whether or not that's, financially viable, across, all of our schools in the division, I have no idea. But to kind of get back to it, what you're asking, could we use more of this, and could we have more small group instruction so it reaches all of our classrooms on a more regular basis? Sure we could. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So anyone else questions? Trustee Duma?
Just a note about the pre-planned lessons for teachers were included in that kit that was purchased. So I'm assuming that just curious about when is the lesson, when do the teachers learn that? Is that during a PD day? Like when is that opportunity for them to get ahead of that and understand it? And also, is some of this learning also shared with other teachers in the division?
So fortunately, in this case, these resources that we've picked up are very user-friendly, very user-friendly. So, you know, we did not need to dedicate any professional development time to the use of these resources. Teachers were able to use their existing prep time, part of their, you know, after school, before school duties. They just saw it as part of their professional responsibilities to make themselves familiar with these resources. And fortunately, like I say, they were very, very user-friendly. In terms of sharing them with the other schools, we haven't done any sharing yet because those are just new to us this year, right? I shouldn't say that. We have heard from Beaujeu Early Years School because their current vice principal was one of our teachers at the school last year who helped with the application for the Haggerty materials. So she's inquired a couple times about how it's working, and so we filled her in a little bit on that, and so she's got a sense of how that's going. So, yeah.
Anyone else for Mr. Reed? Is that? No, I have a question. So one of the questions I do ask all the time, and you've answered, is that how do we know it's working? Because I think bottom line is, I think I stand with Trustee Pachakowski, as the rest of our trustees do. We want to provide as many resources to schools. But at the end of the day, we want to know that it's working. And so by showing us this kind of information, that's what we're looking for. And if it wasn't working, I think that we're okay with that, but then what are you going to do about it? But part of it is right now you're showing that it's going ahead and working. But I want to comment about Powerview School. So during the pandemic, we certainly got information from Powerview School, certainly about attendance. And Powerview School's attendance was by far, had the highest absenteeism rate compared to our other schools. So can you tell me a little bit about what the last 5 years, if there's been a change at Powerview School, or over the pandemic, how it's affected you, and what's the plan going forward, and what do you need from us?
Well, I'll make some comments, but then I'll invite Mary Jo and Larry to chime in if they've got anything to add. If I had to highlight, you know, kind of one theme about how you asked about Powerview School changing over the last 5 years, and I would say the last 5 years, but probably even beyond, is it's an unfortunate reality or a truth to our community that since the mill closed, which is now going on, I think, 14 years, it just seems every year poverty has a greater impact in our community, right? And you know, it just seems to keep going in our community, right? It's like, you know, I'm sure there's other places in Manitoba, but I can't think of another one where, you know, a family can move to the community and purchase, you know, an older, you know, 2 or 3 bedroom home for $70,000 to $100,000, right? And, you know, we've got some affordable housing in the community, and that continues to, you know, attract families that can afford that level, or low-income rentals. We see people coming in and buying those homes and then flipping them into kind of lower-income rentals. And it is just, Powerview has just become a place that's accessible to more families that are living on lower incomes. And we are definitely seeing that in our community. So that's a trend that started many years ago with the closing of the mill, but oddly enough, it hasn't seemed to reverse itself yet. It still seems to be kind of heading in that direction, right? So it's a whole nother conversation, but it is, you know, so widely documented out there. I'll just say that, you know, poverty has so many negative impacts on children and learning, right? And then we start to see those frontline in the school. And that's just what we're seeing more of every year in our school coming through the doors. Wonderful kids, wonderful families that are sort of coming in the doors not as ready to learn is how I would label it, right? And that's our reality. So we expect kids to come in kindergarten with certain skills. They don't have them, so we start behind, and then we go to work helping them catch up. And that would be the one general observation, how poverty is, or how Powerview has changed in my time there and continues to go in that direction. I guess the second part is, well, what do we need? I would say, unfortunately, what we need, and I've highlighted a couple times, is probably the most expensive support, and that is the people, right? And we've talked, we showed some data tonight about small group instructions. It doesn't always have to be a classroom teachers. We get great work out of our educational assistants. We have excellent educational assistants, and teachers can plan things and they go to work, but, you know, it is our clinicians, it is our, you know, our learning support teachers, it is our classroom teachers that really do the heavy lifting for us and help us out. And so the reality is, though, is those are the most expensive resources in our system. And so that's always, I think, going to be the crunch for the people that sit at this table, is balancing those two things, right? So.
All right, thanks very much, Travis. Did you want, yeah, Kath?
Yeah, it's perfect, because the one thing that I wanted to say is that even though you point that it's one of the most expensive things, it's also research that it's the best thing you can do to help move kid learning forward, is strong, solid teaching. So it costs, but it's the number one way to sort of move the learning forward. I guess the second piece that I wanted to just comment on is one of the pieces that we need to shift our mindset on, you've done a really good job of, is the data should be making us ask more questions. And we look at it so that we can see what do we need to do next. And it's not always that we have the answers or are trying to point that, hey, look at, we're doing this and it's great. It does point us in the direction of what next. And I think that you've done a great job of highlighting that too.
Anybody else, anything for Poverty School? Go ahead, Trev.
Sorry, Paul, I had one thought when you had talked about the pandemic and its impact. Just the one thing I want to highlight, and it's not new information. We've heard about it in, you know, the mainstream media so often over the last couple of years about student mental health. And, you know, 100%, you know, we really started to see the impact of that over the last 6 months at Powerview School. You know, they talked about it a lot. We weren't really seeing it throughout the first year of the pandemic. But boy, oh boy, it's really hard to label what it is, but kids are struggling. They're struggling. They're anxious about what, you know, the future holds. They're anxious about being at school. We're seeing more depression. We're just seeing all kinds of stuff. And, you know, we haven't labeled it yet at Powerview School in terms of what actually is causing it. We hear all the time weekly in the media that student mental health is struggling or suffering. And yeah, 100%, we are seeing that on the front line at Powerview School. And unfortunately, at this point, don't have an intercept for that. But we talk about it often. And so, you know, our counselors, our social worker, we're fortunate enough to have mental health worker allocated to our school. Those people are very, very busy, you know, in the recent months. Very, very busy. And the demand outstretches the resources we have in that area, for sure. So.
Well, thanks for adding that. We appreciate that. I thought that you were going to talk a little bit about the excellent hockey coach that you had or something, so, but thanks for...
I just want to add that if we weren't so focused on student learning and literacy, that we might have a little bit more time to invest in our hockey team, and we might be able to keep up with SCI, but at Powerview School, we're very focused on student learning, and our athletics just is second to that. And we're happy. We're happy being the second or third best team in the league. And bravo at SCI, well done for them. So.
Well, we know that Mr. Dell is probably listening, and we are going to cut his athletic budget and go ahead and share it with other schools so they can be as successful. But all kidding aside, thanks very much, the three of you, for being here and presenting to us good information. And I think, you know, you heard from Trustee Nicol that part of it is we're looking for continued data coming back to us to kind of find out where things are. But thanks very much. And again, you're more than welcome to stay with the thousands of people that are watching online the rest of our meeting. Anyways, drive safe. Have a good one. I'm going to move us forward. 5.1 talks about our minutes. Be it resolved that the board adopt the March 1st board meeting minutes. I need a move and a seconder. Moved by Trustee Petrzakowski, seconded by Trustee Harris. Comments? Hearing none, we'll vote. So it passed 6-1, one abstained, one opposed, and passed by 6. Thank you. The superintendent's report. Kath?
Thank you. So I wanted to share the superintendent's report and just kind of address the fact that we are on our first day of no public health orders. And again, it is really super important to note that even though there are no public health orders, students no longer need to wear their masks, they no longer need to remain in cohorts, and they no longer need to keep the 2-meter social distance. But those are recommendations that come forward, and it's important that we do some of the recommendations. So, and I have a mask around my ears so that when I'm within 2 meters of someone, I can put that on and keep my cold germs or garlic breath or whatever that might be to myself, and I have that choice to wear a mask. Lots of our kids and lots of our adults also choose to wear masks, and we want to make sure that we're being inclusive with that. The most important thing that we keep hearing is that it is important to stay home when we're sick, and it is important to continue practicing good hand hygiene so that we are making sure that whatever germs we have, we are not passing along. And that's probably the biggest long-term shift that we've seen from here. We also have some rapid antigen test kits that will be made available to families. I think they're widely available throughout the communities, but we wanted to make sure those were available to our families as well at schools, just in case they're not finding them somewhere else. So at parent-teacher conferences, schools will have those kits. Our principals are here together for the first time in 2 years tomorrow. Pretty excited about it. And they'll be picking up their kits and have them in hand when they come back to school on the 17th. If parents aren't coming to parent-teacher or your school doesn't have a parent-teacher evening, then just fill out the form and the school can send a kit home with your child, or you can make arrangements to come pick up one at the school. Again, a little shout out that we're doing parent-teacher conferences this spring in person. We had a combo of virtual and in-person in the fall, and so we've had some practice on what it looks like coming back in the building. We don't need to be doing 2 meters distance any longer, but I always want to recommend to folks that we're very, very aware of what others around us might want, and let's make sure that we're respecting someone's personal space. I think today I had a couple of opportunities where people were right in my space, and I said, I'm just going to take a step back if that's okay. And that kind of language needs to be okay in the world that we live now. So it's not being rude, it's being realistic about what it is that my needs might be if someone is in my space. Sadly, I have a very large personal space. I might have said that before the pandemic. Again, we're also planning for in-person orientations for kindergarten students. Schools are busily trying to get some stuff ready and having our kindergarten students and families coming back into schools. They are also planning for grade 12 convocation ceremonies and graduation celebrations in June 2022. So they're on the accelerated planning model. Be kind. They will get information to you as soon as they have that. One of the other things that we're doing in May is that I'm going to say a huge thank you to Jackie Julian and Joanna Captain, who have organized for Dr. Jody Carrington to come speak to all of our staff on May 9th. She is a presenter who's going to speak candidly about self-care and resilience and effective coping strategies for our own mental health. And I think one of the big things that we need to do is that if the adults in our buildings are looking after their own mental health, they have a better capacity to help the students and children in our buildings. So that's coming up on May 9th as well. I think that's it if there's questions.
Any questions for Kathy?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Don.
Trustees able to attend the one of the PD possession on May the 9th?
You bet. Our schools are actually hosting them, so if you wanted to come into the school, you could sit with the staff, or Jackie and Joanna would be able to send the link out to you and you could attend virtually. It is a virtual event. It is not in person, so it is going to be live streamed or webcast through Teams on May 9th from 9 till 10ish in the morning, and it is virtual in all of our schools.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Kathy? Thanks, Kath. The 6.2 is a draft reporting schedule, and I saw that the K-8 report card data will come up in next meeting. Thanks for that. That's information for us. 7.1 is Secretary Treasurer's report. Scott?
Thanks, Paul. The report's there. I'll highlight a few things. I'm not sure if the board is aware of it, but the Office of Drinking Water has made some funding available for us to do some testing in our schools, so we're taking advantage of that at this point in time. The province hasn't mandated that we test our water, but I think that's probably coming down the pipe at some point in time, so we jumped ahead of it a little bit, and we'll see if there's any mitigation required once that's done. We're still waiting for a response on our expanded capital request. We put in a request for just a little over $750,000 worth of maintenance projects. We do expect to hear back literally any day now, and I want to say I appreciate, Mr. Chair, the comments off the top of my last meeting. I do have one more, and now I probably have two more, because the province has asked us to probably arrange for a special meeting. If we do get funding on some of these projects, we'll have to pass a promissory note as a board, so we can take on funding to do these projects. So probably not a long meeting, but maybe keep your Tuesdays and Thursdays open for the next week or so, because we will have to pass this promissory note if we get these projects approved. Still haven't heard back, last piece on maintenance on our portable classrooms. You know, we did put a request in, as you know, and we'll see where that lands. ICT, we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, potentially some of the things that we may be looking at doing with a potential surplus this year, and how that's related to some IT projects. When we were going through the budget process, we did ask for some feedback from our administrators and what their needs may be, and a long list of that was IT related. So should we decide to spend some dollars this year from our surplus, I think a good portion would likely go towards that. Having said that, they're starting to gear up now. In fact, I just approved the purchase order last week for the refresh this year that's happening in sort of the north area of the division, Powerview, Lactabani, and Whitemouth. The purchase order was for about 252 desktop computers and 228 laptops. So ICT is trying to source that product so that they're ready to go when students go home for the summer, and they can get into schools and start replacing all of those machines. Transportation, we're going to talk a little bit as well about our surplus in camera. You know, I do want to recognize that there is some urgency to that discussion, because we're looking to get in on the provincial RFP for purchasing equipment. The deadline is March 25th, so this is our last meeting before then. I think Jason has mentioned he's hanging around till we get to that portion of the discussion as well, in case we have any questions or need some feedback from him. So I appreciate he's giving up his evening to do that. And finally, our finance folks, got T4s out, woohoo. I'm going to do my tax return and hopefully get a refund this year, so I'll get on that right away. Now that T4s are out, looking at doing some retroactive pay checks for all of our union and non-union staff related to COLA. We've had discussions with most of the unions, and they recognize it's they're being patient with us. They understand it takes a bit of time to get through all of the work that is required at year end, and we're starting to roll on that now. We did approve the budget on March 1st, so appreciate that, and we were required to send out tax notices to the municipalities by March 15th. We got them out to the municipalities on the 11th, and I thank Chair Magnan for cruising down to Beausejour to sign off on those so we could get them out to the municipalities. So that's what I have today, and I'll be happy to take questions.
Thanks, Scott. Floor is open. Questions for Scott? Scott, I have three. Can we make sure that when we do the water, that we publicize it somehow, certainly on our website? Because right now, if anybody's listening, they're hearing, oh, we're going to do our water check. So can we make sure then that we're saying is that we've tested in this school and this school and this school, and these are the results coming back? So that'll be good for us. Question number two. So you said that schools had options of refresh. One of the things that I forgot to ask Mr. Reid, because I was going in to see him, because remember I told you I went in and used Mrs. Magnow's computer, and it took a little while to start up. I asked Mr. Reid today, how long did it take his computer to start up, and he says anywhere from 4 minutes, sometimes to 15 minutes to start up. Did Powerview School have the opportunity, instead of desktops, to get laptops?
Yeah, so two comments, Paul. On the water, that's actually a requirement. Once we're tested, that we do have to publicize results, and obviously we would publicize if there's any mitigation required and how we went about that mitigation to make sure that it's fine. And the piece on the equipment refresh, yes. Gord did speak to all of the administrators at the schools in question. They were able to provide feedback. I think schools, are leaning towards more portable IT classrooms as opposed to having a dedicated computer lab. So they're leaning towards more laptops and carts. And it did increase, I have to say, it increased the cost of our refresh this year a little more than in previous years, but we were able to find budget for that. But certainly the administrators had input on it.
Thanks. And my last thing is, we're talking about retro pay, and so I know that probably there are some people that are hanging on to kind of find out when it is. When you get an idea of a schedule or when you know you can do that, can we just make sure that you're letting the board know and then certainly letting our staff know, certainly about kind of a retro kind of when it can be done? Because again, if people are just hanging on, at least they know, hey, it's coming out in the next month, it's coming out whatever. But if they can know a schedule, that'll help.
Yeah, I'll confirm that with payroll, Paul, but I do anticipate it would be coming out before the end of March for sure. But I can give trustees an update on that.
Anyone else for Scott? Okay, Scott, let's move on. 8.0 board business. We've got COVID costs. You've provided that information. Anything to add?
Yeah, just one quick comment. We're looking at some things to obviously to go ahead and spend this funding on. One of the things that Kathy and I had talked about a little bit is we did have some purchases towards the end of last year that because of supply chain issues with certain things, certainly around IT equipment specifically, but also on some other things, the purchases were not able to make it to be delivered by June 30th, so we put that into this year's expenditures. So we're looking at hopefully including that into our COVID costs. Most of the supply chain issues obviously COVID related, and that totals up to somewhere around the neighborhood of $90,000. So we'll be adding that to this report.
Thanks. Any questions for Scott? Okay, hearing none, we're moving on to, as I just logged out of my computer, we're moving on to land planning. Scott, floor is yours with land planning.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So if you'll recall, we had discussed the idea of engaging the services of an external consultant with some expertise in urban development or land planning to assist us by looking at some of the growth plans of the municipalities in our division and assessing where we may have increases in enrollment and may need to start looking at expanding some of our facilities. So the end goal will be a report that we'll use to speak to municipalities and also get it on the radar of the province, because ultimately they would be the ones who would be responsible for funding the development of a new facility or expansion of a facility. So we did go to market with an RFP, I think we approached 4 firms, did have a couple come back that were interested, selected one largely based on recommendations from some people I've spoken to, as well as costs. So the recommendation is there along with the resolution, and if the board is ready to go, we're happy to engage.
So that was in our package. Any questions from people about the land planning? Trustee Duma?
The only thing that isn't in here is the span. Are we looking at 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road? How far are we asking them to look?
Yeah, so the request from both firms was both in the, we call short-term and longer-term, so 5, 10, 15, 20, and even up to 30 years.
So the information should come back being broken down that way? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm not understanding then, are we looking for the motion tonight to go ahead and move this forward?
Yes.
So Stacy, can you get the motion on ESB? Or do we want to come back to it? Say that, Stace? Okay, so let's come back. Oh, thank you. Understood. We'll come back to it. Thanks, Scott, for that. 8.3 is our grade 9 to 12 credit attainment report. You've got it there, Kath. Anything you want to add?
A couple quick highlights. You have the report there, and there is just one piece that I wanted to sort of highlight. Over here it says students who have attained 0 credits or show up with a blank. There's a number of reasons that that might happen, and it might be that they have an individualized plan. It might be that they just joined us. It might be that they have an incomplete that they haven't quite finished in first semester, and that wraps up by second semester. I didn't put in here, and I should have, put that we have some students who are doing work for education credits and apprenticeship credits and work experience credits, and those don't typically get granted until a student has completed their apprenticeship hours or their work for credit hours. So that's a piece that should be in there. And then I also wanted to point out in that second last bullet, it is sometimes in the best interest and also way more widely accepted for students to plan for a 5-year or a 6-year high school completion target date. We've often gone into the game and said, oh my goodness, we've got 4 years to complete high school, and if you don't do that, somehow that's a problem. That isn't the case any longer. Spreading that out over multiple years is a very widely accepted approach. So I just wanted to highlight that sometimes we know that early on, and we accept that and plan for that for some students. One of the biggest indicators from research is that grade 9 credit attainment is one of our highest predictors for successful completion of high school programming, so our schools drill down into that. When you look at the report, the data report, you should be seeing the credits increasing from grade 9 to 10 to 11 to 12. And the one that impresses me, I think the most, is the grade 12 data, because we have the bulk of our students who are right on track to graduation. So just wanted to make sure that you had all that information.
So this is, thanks Kath for this. So part of it is we're always looking for data. I'm having a hard time, so the data is great, but I guess my question then will go to you. Are you happy with this data, and how do we compare this data compared to somewhere else? Because I just don't know how I turn around and say, well, this is good. I don't know if this is good or bad.
So again, if I look at this and I look at the progressions all the way through here, I can look at this data and I can take a little look here and say, back to the first slide, we have students that need to get 30 credits to graduate. So if I grab up to this bar that has a 16 on it, everybody from the 16 that away is on track to graduate in their 4 years. They're in grade 12 and they have enough credits right now to get 4 more. Some of our schools have the ability to have 5 or even some other credits. So some of these students down here that have the 1s and the 2s and these, they're down here at 16s or 17s, might be on individual education plans. So we drill down and look at these and say, what's the situation with these students here? Some of these in the 19 to 23 range might be on that 5-year or that 6-year plan. But when I look at that and say this amount of students from where my little cursor is off to the left are on track to graduate, that makes me feel like we're doing a good job with where are our students and how are they doing. The other thing that I look at is that we've got students here on the 30 bar that can graduate right now. And they are able to improve their credits or to get credits that they might want to take for other programs. I do want to look at it all the way through and say, okay, so where are they in grade 11? Where is that bump and where is that gradation there? Where are we at in grade 10 and are we on track with that? I think our schools do a really good job with our student support staff and with our instructional staff in terms of drilling deeper with these students who might be on either the 5 or 6 year plan or who have an alternate plan to how they're going to transition out into the real world. Does that help?
It does. However, it doesn't tell me that we're doing, and again, you need the data over a period of time to find out whether it's we're doing a better job from year to year. I guess I don't necessarily need that. What I certainly liked what you talked about is those kids that were on the right-hand side of the blip on the data. You know, there's probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 kids that are 1 and 2 credits, and then some, you know, some of them are less, and again, it would be really good to know, I guess then, how many of those kids, you know, that have 20 credits and down are kind of on individual plans or those kind of things. Anyways, it's good data to know kind of, I think that you clarified kind of from going to the left, we have a vast majority of our kids on that side. I just don't have anything to compare it to whether it's good or not, but from your point, what I like about hearing from you is that you're happy with it and moving from there. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, let's keep going. Mileage rate, that's you, Scott?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So, as you know, we review our mileage rates twice a year in April and October, and as you also know, anybody who drives knows the price of fuel is ridiculous lately. So, I did do this time around a pretty quick survey, and I appreciate my colleagues, 37 secretary-treasurers across the province. I sent out an email, and I think I had like 28 of them respond within one day. So, so I appreciate that from them. There's a report attached there. You know, is it helpful? Maybe a little bit. It's all over the map. You'll see the lowest mileage rate paid by any division in Manitoba at 40 cents and the highest at 60. The average being about 47. I included some comments there because I think a lot of the ones, you'll see Portage la Prairie, our rate will be reviewed in the near future. Interlake, we're definitely going to look at a rate. We're thinking of going to 53. I think a lot of the ones that are lower right now are planning on having a discussion at the board level on that fairly soon. So that's just a backup piece. You know, given the price of fuel, and I always sort of rely on the provincial calculation, and they're generally saying they pay 41 cents a liter or a kilometer, pardon me, but for every 10 cents that fuel goes over $1, they add an additional penny to that rate. So you know, we were at 48 with the price of fuel going up to about $1.80, almost $1.80 in some areas. My recommendation is to go to 50 cents, and it's there.
Thanks, Scott. So everybody's had this report to go ahead and take a look at. Are there any questions for Scott, certainly with regard to it? Now, this is a normal review for us. Scott, we review mileage. This isn't because of the price of gas going skyrocketing. This is because of our policy that we've done this every year, where we look at the two dates and look at our mileage rate. So, questions from trustees with regard to questions or comments? I'll go around the room and see what people want to add or comment. Trustee Inslee, any comment? None. Trustee Duma?
No, I mean, I think we have in the past had conversations where we compare it to the provincial rate. I mean, that's probably the most, in a comparison, that's where I've usually landed to.
Trustee Reed?
I'd be in favor of increasing the rate.
Trustee Harris? Trustee Pachkowski? Trustee Nicol?
No comment.
Trustee Rowland?
No question. Or comment.
Okay, thank you. So be it resolved that the Board of Trustees set the divisional mileage rate at 50 cents per kilometer effective April the 1st, 2022. I need to move in a seconder. Moved by Trustee Pachkowski, seconded by Trustee Reed. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. So it passed at 7-1. Thank you for that. 8.5, motion referred back to the Policy Committee, Policy 22. Okay. This is this Trustee Rowan. You brought up, made a comment last meeting about referring policy number 22 back to a review. We need a motion to go ahead and do that, if that's something that we want to go ahead and do. So one trustee just can't say, hey, let's refer it back. We need to do it by motion to instruct our staff to do that, and to have then the policy committee review that. So,
Paul?
Yes.
I wish to withdraw the motion. We did discuss it at a policy committee, and there's no desire to make changes, so I don't see the
purpose of sending it back again.
Okay, anyone else in here? Okay, so we'll move on, thank you. 8.6, proposal to subdivide, that's for information. Scott, anything to add to that? Okay, so it's just for information, that's in Lactabani. We have 8.7, the Ecole Parvati School field trip to Drumheller. I'm probably in a conflict of interest here because this is my wife is taking a group of students, so I probably shouldn't vote on this. So I'm just giving everybody a heads up. This is a field trip that my wife is planning, so I won't go ahead and I'll refrain from voting. But be it resolved that the board approved in principle the Ecole Parvati School D trip, so that's the D team, to Drumheller, Alberta from May 29th to May 31st. Subject to the superintendent's final approval. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by trustee Duma, seconded by trustee Pachakowski. Any questions on this? Trustee Harris?
I would just like to note that this is our first field trip recommendation motion in over 2 years. It's great to be getting back to normal.
Yeah, I agree. Kath, did you want to make any comment?
No, I agree wholeheartedly with you, Trustee Harris. This is also a field trip that was on the books pre-pandemic, and I think these kids are pretty excited about being able to do it.
All right, hearing none. Oh, sorry, trustee Reed?
My thinking was, I mean, it's up to you, but my thinking was you shouldn't be, or you don't need to be excusing yourself. If, you know, it's an educational trip, and if you feel it's educational, I think you should probably vote for it. And if it's not educational, like, I don't see having a spouse has anything to do with that. It's whether it's of value or not, so I don't know how anybody could argue. Just my thinking.
Thanks. Again, I just wanted to be transparent, certainly with people as to where it is. I think we'll go ahead and vote, and again, just to be transparent, I'll abstain and we'll move forward. Okay, so hearing none, we'll vote. So it passed 7-0 with 1 abstention. Thank you very much for that. I'll be able to go home tonight, and someone will be very happy. Thanks. Trustee Duma?
Just before you move on to the next item, I think from the item before that, there was that correspondence letter that was being sent for Lactabani land planning. That was looking like it's going to be sent off. It's a draft. I just wondered if we could make sure that that is included in the correspondence of our minutes.
Thank you. We'll make sure that that Stacy does that. Thanks, Trustee Duma. The Ecole Parvati School field trip to Assisipi. This isn't my wife, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. Be it resolved that the board approve in principle the Ecole Parvati School grade 6 to 8 trip to Assisipi on March 20th to March 22nd, subject to superintendent's approval. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by trustee Duma, seconded by trustee Pachakowski. Any comments? Trustee Harris?
I would like to note that by coincidence, this one is actually happening first compared to the other one, so this one should have been first, so these are the ones that should get all the credit for being the first field trip going after our pandemic.
Forget it, I'm not telling my wife that. Okay, so let's go ahead and, so no other comments, let's vote. It passed 8-0, thank you. Policy Committee. I'm going to turn it over to Trustee Harris. Anything from the Policy Committee?
We had a meeting last week. The minutes are attached. I believe we were bringing a notice of motion forward regarding one of the items that we looked at last week was consistency between different policies, and we found that
Policy 5 and Policy 9, specifically 9.8, don't align in terms of when the supervaluation is supposed to happen. So we're bringing a notice of motion that we will be changing Policy 5 to bring it in line with Policy 9.8 at our next meeting.
Thank you. Any questions for Trustee Harris? Trustee Pachkowski?
Can you just elaborate on some of that is?
Certainly. Policy 5 states that the supervaluation will happen in August. Policy 9, Section 9.8 says the superintendent evaluation should happen in April or May. Policy felt that April or May is the better timeline to follow, so the chart in Policy 5 needs to be altered slightly to match that Policy 9.8.
Thank you. Any other questions? Trustee Duma?
So is there a notice of a motion that's in these minutes for today? Are you putting the notice in today? Because the minutes are there, they mean nothing unless we adopt whatever motion is in the minutes. The minutes are just for information, unless there's something else.
So I'm bringing a verbal notice of motion that at our next meeting we'll be bringing a formal motion to alter Policy 5 to match Policy 9.
So can we get Stacy in our minutes that Trustee Harris has brought forward a notice of motion to change policy number 5? Trustee Duma?
Well, and it's the committee, not trustee. It is the committee that's bringing it forward.
You're right. On behalf, Trustee Harris is talking on behalf of the policy committee. Thank you. Good point. Let's move on. Before I get to the Finance Committee and Trustee Nicol, I do want to commend Trustee Nicol on the presentation that he made. Scott, Trustee Nicol, and there were some trustees that were there that made a presentation on the funding model. The Finance Committee did sit down and talk about it, but we were able to get in front of the provincial group that's listening to funding, and Trustee Nicol did a great job on behalf of Sunrise School Division. So Don, I just want to commend you on the work that you did on behalf of the Finance Committee and Sunrise School Division on the presentation, so kudos to you. And if you want to talk about it, you can, but I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Don, about Finance Committee update. Chair Nicol.
Thanks very much. So you can see our last meeting was February 17th, the beginning of March 17th. When we talked to the government, we talked verbally, and we also did a written report in there. But some of the verbal stuff that we talked about wasn't in the written report. And at that time, I asked him if we could, whatever we talked about verbally, could we put it in the written report? So that's what the written report says here, which says, I can see that the formula is spelled wrong. It should be an A instead of an S, but so more or less what the written report is more or less what we had said orally. We more or less give a little bit more in depth because when we talk orally, sometimes we were underneath the time frame, so we just kind of gave a quick overview of what we were talking about, and then this report kind of indicate more what we really meant by that. So what I'm doing is I'm asking, we haven't sent this to the government yet. If we're going to send it, we have to send it this week because they're looking at, so he said he's looking at this week from Monday to Friday, so it'd be nice if we could send it as soon as possible so we could have a chance to look at it. So at this time, I'd like to make a resolution to be resolved. The Finance Committee send them all of education funding report to Ledger Research, this is hired by Manager of Education on March 16, 2022. So I move that on behalf of the Finance Committee.
Okay, moved on behalf of the Finance Committee. I need a seconder to get it on the floor. Seconded by Trustee Harris. Comments to it from anyone? Okay, so there's no questions to it? Oh, trustee Duma?
I don't understand the paragraph that starts grade 9 to 12, need 40 credits taught. I don't understand that line.
Yeah, I figure that might be some difficulty with that. Okay, in grade 9, in order to get the 30 credits, you should be doing 8 credits in grade 9. And then in grade 10, because in grade 10 they break up math into essential and pre-cal, so you really need 10 credits. So you need 10 teachers in order to teach the grade 10. If you can understand that, we need extra credits. We have somebody has to teach extra credit. In grade 11, what happens is that there is options in physics, chemistry, and biology. So again, you need some extra teachers to teach those courses. And in grade 12, you're going to have the same thing. You're going to have the physics, chemistry, and biology. So that's where you get the 40 credits. I hope I explained that well.
I think I'm going to let Kathy give it a try, and then I'm going to try maybe afterwards, because no, it was hard to understand, Dawn. You are a little choppy, so maybe Kathy will try here.
Thanks for the vote of confidence that you're going to have to re-explain after me. So Dawn, if you can listen critically, I think what I'm hearing is you're talking about the credits that are offered, not the credits that the kids need to take and complete. So because there are 2 different maths available in grade 10, we need to offer both of them. Because there are 3 maths available in grade 11 and 3 sciences available in 11, we need to offer them in the timetable, but kids wouldn't necessarily be taking 40 credits. Is that true?
That's right. They won't be. You've got to offer them.
So Dawn, I think that probably needs to be wordsmithed a little bit. That's down here. It's about the availability of courses for students, considering that there's 2 maths in grade 10, like Kathy said, and 3 maths in grade 11. So we need to be able to make those things available to students. So I think there's some wordsmithing, and maybe that's something that you and Kathy can go ahead and work at. I'll help out as well. And then once we have the final document, we'll get it out to the board, and then we'll send it off. Is that okay, Don? This is going out tomorrow?
Yeah.
What's that? Okay, so Don, this is you and I are going to do a little bit of work on this tomorrow. No, not tonight, tomorrow. Trustee Duma?
Well, I mean, I know a lot of this is about the formula itself and numbers, that sort of thing, but I guess in my head, I'm also looking at themes, and I think one of the things that is has always been a challenge is the not enough funding and focus on vocational programming across the whole province. And it would be nice to have something in there that says that was a strong interest.
Okay, that's something we can try. We didn't bring it up at the comment, but vocational programming is certainly always a challenge for rural schools, yes. Okay, Don, you got some work to do certainly on this. I agree, it's a little unclear, but obviously tomorrow a little bit of work. And I can work on it to you, and we'll also get it out to trustees. Thank you. So, Don, you're really choppy. We can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay, I moved my phone. Sorry. Okay. Are we going to vote on the resolution? Because, like I said before, if we don't vote on the resolution passes, I'm not going to do any work on it because I'm not intending to send it to anybody without approval of the board.
So we have a motion on the floor. There is some work to be done. You're going to send out. We're going to work on the revising the letter. And so it's what your motion is, and it's on the floor. Be it resolved, the Finance Committee send their model of education funding report to Leger. You've already spoken to them about this. Part of it is some of the recap of it. And Trustee Doom has also talked a little bit about vocational funding. So the motion's on the floor. We do know that we need to get it out tomorrow. We'll go ahead and vote, and if trustees don't like it, then that's fine, then you won't send one, but I think that you probably get some support about sending it.
Okay, and of course, we'll listen to the wordsmith, and we'll stuff in there also.
Okay, you're choppy again, Don, but yes, that we'll do that. Trustee Duma has another comment.
I just wonder if we could just amend the motion to not take away from this discussion, because the report isn't completed and you're not going to send this report as it's written. So be it resolved that the Finance Committee send their model of education funding report, including discussed comments at the meeting today, to Legier Research.
Okay, so we're gonna add, so Don, Don, you're okay with that?
No, can we just add the word, we'll send the amended model?
Yeah, okay. So Trustee Duma's okay with that, so we'll send an amended model. Stacy, we good with that? Everybody good here in the room with that? Okay, so we'll go ahead and vote. So it passed 8-0. Thank you very much for doing that, and thank you for working on this, Don. The Finance Committee, a check register, there is not one, so we do not have one. So professional development, capsule, 9.1 is capsule. It's coming up, there's information there. Stacy, do people just need to get information to you? Is anyone? Oh. Okay. Stacy, can you tell us, just share with the board who's all registered there? Do you know? And if you don't, then we can come back to it, that's fine. Okay. Financial monitoring report is not here. Board correspondence, it's the information that's there, nice to know information. There's a variety of Clipper articles that are there. Good to see. We have upcoming meetings. April the 5th and April 19th. Questions from the public, Scott? There's no questions from the public. So we do need to move back into in-camera. There are some things that we still need to go ahead and do. So can we take, it's 9 o'clock, can we take 5 minutes? Can we take 5 minutes? And then we'll come back into in-camera and Jared will lead us in-camera. So it's 9 o'clock right now, take a break, and 9:05 come back. Thanks. 10 o'clock, seconded by Diane Duma. How do you say, Trustee Inslee? Yes. Trustee Duma? Yes. Trustee Reed? Abstain. Trustee Harris? Yes. Trustee Pachakowski? Yes. Trustee Nickel?
Yes.
Trustee Trustee Rowland?
Yes.
Trustee Manning is a yes. So 7 yeses and 1 abstain. Okay, so let's keep going. Trustee...
He's a no.
You're a no. Gotcha. Trustee Harris? No. Trustee Reed, are you good to 10:30? Yes. Yes. Trustee Nickel?
I don't know whether I'll be good, but my answer is yes.
Trustee Rowland? What do you say?
Yes.
All right. So it's passed. Okay, so we're back at it, and we're in 17.0 items from in-camera. The first one is, be it resolved that the board approve the recommended administrative appointments as presented effective September the 6th. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by trustee... What do you mean? Be it resolved that the board approve the two recommended administrative appointments as presented as effective September the 6th. Sure. Okay, moved by trustee Harris, seconded by trustee Duma. Any questions on this?
Could we add 2022?
I can't hear you, Don.
Could we add in 2022?
Well, it says it on here that it's effective September 6th, 2022. It says it on the motion.
But that's not what you read.
Oh, I must have bugged out and you didn't hear me, Don. But thank you,
Okay.
thank you for that. Okay, so be it resolved that the board approve the two recommended administrative appointments as presented effective September 6, 2022. We'll vote. So it passed 8-0. Thank you. The second one. Be it resolved that the board revise the Sunrise School Board organizational chart as recommended and presented. Does there somebody want to move that? Moved by trustee Harris, seconded by trustee Pachakowski. Anybody want to comment to this? So just officially that we go on the record is that I'm not going to go ahead and support this. Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, we'll vote. So it passed 5-3. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approve the transfer of $650,000 from our current year's budget to the Transportation Reserve for the purpose of purchasing 4 propane-powered buses. And be it further resolved that the Board approve a transfer of $300,000 to the ICT Reserve for purchases in accordance with the priority list prepared by administrators and approved expenditures above budget for up to $611,000 for maintenance projects and a division-wide supply purchase. A report on all expenditures will be brought to the board by June the 30th. So I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by trustee Pachakowski, seconded by trustee Harris. Any comments? Trustee Duma?
I'm sorry, but it's late to read it, but I'm thinking we use the word up to for the maintenance. Could we not use the word up to for the ICT also? Just to catch us that we don't...
So be it further resolved that the board approve a transfer up to $300,000 to the ICT. So we good with the two movers? Yes and yes? Thank you. Stacy, you got that? Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. So it passed 7-1, thank you. 17.4, be it resolved that the board contract with Landmark Planning and Design Incorporated to provide professional services related to preparation of a planning report as it relates to the municipalities of Springfield, Broken Hill, and the town of Beausejour, with the final report to be provided no later than June 30th, 2022. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by trustee Duma, second by trustee Reed. Any questions? Hearing none, we'll vote. So let's please put for up to 13.5. Be it resolved the board contract Landmark Planning and Design Incorporated to provide professional services related to preparation of planning report as it relates to municipalities, broken in with a final of up to a cost of $13,500 with final report to be provided no later than June the 30th. Trustee Duma, you okay with that? Trustee Reed, you okay with that? Change? Trustee Reed? You okay with that? Okay.
By the way, once you read the motion once, you can't just ask the two movers and seconds, because it now goes on to the board agenda, and you really have to either have an amendment or you got to ask all the trustees.
Okay, so we need an amendment to the motion. Thank you for this. Right, is that what we need? All right, so let's make an
If you
amendment.
just ask if somebody is in favor of the amendment, then
Okay.
it's a friendly amendment, then.
Okay, so this is a friendly amendment then, to add that, and I don't think that anybody objected to it. So we're good with that? All right, so
Yeah.
we're on track, so that's perfect. Well, all right, we'll vote. And thank you, it passed 8-0. And the last one. Be it resolved that trustee Rowland's name be put forward for trustees' representation on the provincial bargaining committee. Moved by trustee Pachakowski, seconded by trustee Duma. Hearing no discussion, we'll vote. And it passed at 7-1 with trustee Rowland abstaining. All right, that's it? There's nothing else?
Yeah.
I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Oh, can you stay on for a few seconds? Or
Can I-
should I phone you later?
Let's call. I'll call you.
Okay. Don Nichol.